Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We turn now to poem 352. This one it opens with the line, "Perhaps I asked too large, perhaps I asked too much." Many see this as one of the most important poems in understanding Emily Dickinson's project. And in fact, the great scholar Judith Farr, in her classic The Passion of Emily Dickinson, actually saves this poem for the very last lines. And in fact, at the end of our comments here, we'll in fact read those last comments. Our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily is the playlist title. And I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments as well as our preceding 351 poems. We just finished with 351. I felt my life with both my hands. If you have been doing that reading, you know that this has been one of those kind of avenues of thought for Emily. Did I bite off too much? The comparison model, this versus that, where, for example, she will compare being a poet versus just being a normal person. We might call her domesticated or a housewife. Or, how about this one? The comparison between being a poet that is longing for immortality versus just being one of the lady poets, as they're sometimes referred to, that would publish in the Springfield Republican. It's clear Emily had zero interest in that. She says it this way: "Perhaps I ask too large, I take no less than skies, for earths grow thick as berries in my native town. My basket holds just firmaments, those dangle easy on my arm. But smaller bundles cram." Now, of course, it's so powerful the way she plays the word picture game that less is more, and therefore more is less. Notice she'll begin with her word perhaps. Now, we've mentioned this poem 696 several times. Their height in heaven comforts not, their glory not to me. 'Twas best imperfect as it was. I'm infinite. I'm finite. I can't see the house of supposition, the glimmering frontier that skirts the acres of perhaps to me shows insecure. The wealth I had contented me. If 'twas a meaner size, then I had counted it until it pleased my narrow eyes. Better than larger values that show however true. This timid life of evidence keeps pleading. I don't know. I love that Emily begins epistemologically from the fallibilist position. I could be wrong, perhaps. I asked too large. In other words, perhaps my life was devoted to something impossible to gain. And then she'll say, I take no less than skies. In other words, you got to understand something about me. She says, I'm only interested in everything, right? I'm only interested in everything. As she will say in a pivotal moment, all is the price of all. She'll say it in poem 772. A wonderful way to say it. I take no less than skies. And then she'll say it. For earths, notice capitalized, and here probably the idea of being domesticated in some way, grow thick as berries in my native town of Amherst, right? In other words, everybody, she says, in my town has made a certain kind of choice for the earth. I made, in fact, a choice of the skies. Then she'll talk about her basket, which obviously could be understood as her poetry, right? Holds just firmaments. I love that she uses the dash, the word just, and then the dash. Because, of course, she's playing with her Plato's Republic and the question of justice. What is ideal? What is just? She says, all I get is just. Of course, it's understated. It's the pivotal word of the poem. Just firmaments, which takes us back to skies. Those, that is to say, her choice of the firmament of the skies, dangle easy. Dangle taking us back to poem 287. Dangle easy on my arm. But smaller bundles, she uses this word smaller in 77 poems to emphasize fragility. Bundles cram. Notice capitalized. The only time that word cram gets used is here, and obviously she means stifling. That is to say, she doesn't want to be diminished in any way. Well, what is she really saying in this poem? I think in 2A she's making the argument, it's best to be happy with who you are. If you long for the skies and the firmaments, then that's what you should long for, and not settle for the earth or be crammed. At 2B, I love her word choice, right? Her word perhaps and cram. At 3A, I've mentioned Judith Farr's classic a number of times, The Passion of Emily Dickinson. This is how she says it. She says, in one lyric, Emily Dickinson writes, I take no less than sky. She introduces her thought by admitting, quote, perhaps I ask too large, and adds 3 lines that explain both her nature and her art. My basket holds just firmaments, those dangle easy on my arm, with smaller bundles cram. Now to finish with Farr, she desired much. These are the last words of the sentinel text on the life of Emily Dickinson. She, Emily, desired much. What she called the honor of an artist, the shortest route to immortality. To attain it, she led her productive life, leaving us the poems that disclose her vision of time in eternity and eternity in time. I mean, I can't say it any better than that, so we'll move on to 3B. And how can you own a poem like this? Well, what was a time when you might have just accepted the earth, but you decided to ask too large, too much for the skies, for the firmament, and you're awfully glad that you did. I hope your study of these poems is one of those challenges. Thank you.